Psychology reveals women do this when they have a high sex drive. Have you ever wondered if you could tell when someone's desire runs deeper than they let on? Most people think they know the obvious signs, but psychology shows the truth is far more subtle, and sometimes even hidden in plain sight. Today, we're uncovering the surprising behaviors women display when their sex drive is higher than they admit. These aren't the cliches you've heard before. These are patterns that even she might not realize she's showing. And pay close attention, because the final point isn't just shocking. It might completely change the way you interpret someone's body language forever. If you're new, welcome. We share daily strategies to help men master dating. Drop a comment below and subscribe for more. 20. She lingers in conversations, even when there's no reason to. When someone has a heightened sex drive, small moments become magnetic. A woman might find herself extending conversations for no practical reason, like staying on a video call after all the important things were already discussed. She isn't consciously doing it. Her nervous system is simply craving stimulation and closeness. What's fascinating is that she might do this even in mundane settings, like chatting with a barista or a coworker. It's not about romance, it's about her subconscious trying to keep human energy flowing. And here's the subtle clue. She doesn't just linger physically, she lingers emotionally, adding little comments, questions, or even awkward laughter just to delay the ending. Notice this, and you'll see how desire often shows up in the smallest, quietest spaces. But what comes next involves her voice, and it's even easier to miss. 19. Her vocal tone dips lower, but only at certain moments. Many people assume women raise their voices when they're interested. That's a half-truth. Research shows that when a woman's sexual energy is heightened, her voice sometimes drops into a slightly lower, smoother register, especially during moments of intimacy or deep focus. This shift doesn't usually last long. It might only appear on certain words, like a subtle ripple under the surface of her usual tone. Think of it like an unconscious exhale that briefly escapes into her speech. Most people completely miss it because it happens so quickly. But once you notice it, you can't unhear it. And here's the twist. The moments she chooses to speak softer often reveal exactly where her mind is wandering. And if her voice changes, there's another physical sign that's even harder for her to control. 18. She fidgets with fabrics. When desire rises, touch becomes heightened. A woman with a higher sex drive may unconsciously fidget with the fabric closest to her. A scarf, a sleeve, even the edge of a blanket. This isn't nervousness in the typical sense. It's a way for her brain to ground itself while processing excess energy. The repetitive motion helps soothe the buzzing sensation of heightened arousal. Here's the giveaway. The movements are rhythmic rather than random. She might stroke the same spot on her clothing repeatedly, or trace small circles with her thumb. It's almost hypnotic once you catch it. But fidgeting isn't the only outlet for that restless energy. Sometimes, she redirects it into something much more social. 17. She creates playful micro-challenges. When a woman's sex drive is strong, competition becomes thrilling in ways she might not consciously realize. She'll often create tiny, playful challenges in conversation, like teasing you to guess her favorite song or daring someone to try a strange food. These moments aren't really about the topic itself. They're about tension. The challenge creates a push and pull dynamic that mirrors the psychological dance of seduction. Here's what makes this unique. If her sex drive weren't elevated, she wouldn't bother with these games at all. The stakes would feel meaningless. But in this state, even small victories become exciting. And just when you think it's only about games, you'll notice how her body betrays her in an even deeper way. 16. She breathes through her mouth more often. Most people never think to notice this. When someone's arousal level is elevated, their breathing patterns shift, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. For women, this often appears as slightly more frequent mouth breathing, especially during quiet moments. It's not dramatic panting like in the movies. It's just a tiny break in the rhythm, almost like her body is unconsciously preparing for deeper sensory experiences. This can happen when she's completely still, like sitting at a desk or watching a movie. Her mind might seem calm, but her body is quietly broadcasting its state through breath. And if you think this is subtle, wait until you see how it shows up in the way she approaches her environment. 15. She becomes overly selective about sensory details. When sexual desire peaks, the senses sharpen, especially touch and smell. A woman with a high sex drive might suddenly seem hyper-aware of textures or scents. She'll comment on how soft a blanket feels, how striking someone's perfume is, or how unusual a certain taste might be. On the surface, it just sounds like small talk, but underneath, her nervous system is craving stimulation, so these details become unusually vivid for her. The The key sign here? She won't just mention these details casually, she'll linger on them, almost savoring the description. But sometimes, instead of expressing this heightened awareness openly, she channels it inward, through imagination. 14. She daydreams more, and it shows in her micro-expressions. Psychologists have found that when sexual energy builds, the imagination becomes more active. A woman may drift into daydreams more often, even in the middle of conversations or tasks. The giveaway isn't her words, it's her face. For a split second, her expression softens, almost like she's reacting to a private scene only she can see. Then, just as quickly, she snaps back to the present. Most people misinterpret this as simple distraction or boredom, but if you notice a subtle half-smile that fades before she even realizes it happened, chances are her mind wandered somewhere much more intimate. And here's where things get even more intriguing. Her relationship with time itself begins to shift. 13. She loses her sense of timing. Desire alters perception, especially when it comes to time. A woman with a high sex drive might underestimate how long she's been engaged in a certain activity, especially one that involves emotional connection. She might swear she only spent 5 minutes chatting, when in reality, it was half an hour. This isn't dishonesty. It's a genuine neurological effect. Her brain becomes so absorbed in the interaction that external time cues fade into the background. The fascinating part? This effect usually doesn't happen with mundane tasks. It appears almost exclusively in moments where hidden desire is at play. But when this shift happens, it can lead to another very specific behavior that most people never notice. 12. She unconsciously mirrors rhythms, not movements. You've probably heard about mirroring body language. This is different. When her sex drive is elevated, a woman may unconsciously sync her rhythms with someone nearby, like matching the pace of her speech, her sipping of a drink, or even her breathing. It's a primal form of connection that bypasses conscious thought. Her body is essentially tuning in to someone else's without either person realizing it. Here's what makes it tricky to catch. The mirroring isn't perfect. It's slightly delayed, like a faint echo. But once you notice it, you'll see how powerful this silent synchronization really is. And as this connection deepens, there's another layer, one that hides in plain sight at gatherings and group settings. 11. She positions herself just outside the spotlight. When sexual energy is high, some women don't seek attention directly. Instead, they hover just beyond it, close enough to feel the energy of the room, but not so close that they risk exposure. She might choose a seat at the edge of a group rather than the center, or stand slightly behind others during conversations. This positioning creates a paradox. She's both watching and being watched. The subtle sign? She'll often glance toward the center more than she needs to, as if feeding on the excitement while keeping herself safely hidden. But when she's truly comfortable, this reserved stance flips, and her gestures reveal something even more telling. 10. She uses slow, deliberate hand movements. Most people move their hands quickly and casually while talking. A woman with a heightened sex drive often slows down these gestures, almost like she's unconsciously savoring the sensation of motion itself. The effect is hypnotic. Each movement feels more intentional, more grounded. She might trace the rim of a glass slowly, or tuck her hair behind her ear in a way that seems exaggeratedly calm. This isn't a performance. It's a side effect of her body becoming more aware of physical sensations. The slower pace draws attention without her even realizing it. And when those hands aren't moving slowly, they might do something completely opposite, and far more surprising. 9. She engages in reset rituals. This one's easy to miss unless you're paying close attention. A woman with a high sex drive may repeatedly reset her posture or environment, almost like she's recalibrating herself. She might stand up and sit down again for no real reason, adjust her jewelry multiple times, or rearrange objects near her. These small rituals help her manage the overflow of restless energy her body is experiencing. Here's what makes it revealing. The actions are precise and often repeated in the exact same order. It's not random fidgeting. It's a structured outlet for something she can't express directly. And if her body needs resetting, her mind often seeks stimulation too, in ways most people never think to notice. 8. She gravitates toward layered humor. When a woman's sexual energy is high, her brain craves complexity. Simple jokes might bore her, but humor with double meanings or clever twists lights her up instantly. She's not just laughing, she's engaging with the hidden layers of meaning. This mirrors the way her own internal world feels right now. Layered, intense, and just slightly secretive. The proof? Watch how she reacts to subtle, clever remarks compared to straightforward ones. The difference in her response is often striking. And just when you think you've figured her out, there's a physical signal that's even harder to control and almost impossible to fake. 7. Her pupils respond to words, not just light. We all know pupils dilate in darkness. But when desire is high, they can also respond to certain ideas. If a woman has a heightened sex drive, her pupils may subtly expand during specific moments in conversation, even if the lighting hasn't changed. This happens because her brain is reacting emotionally to what she's hearing. The change is small and fleeting, but incredibly telling, and it's something she has no conscious control over whatsoever. This physiological response creates a feedback loop, deepening her state of arousal without her even realizing it. And once this loop begins, her social behavior can take a very unexpected turn. 6. She becomes fascinated by unpredictability. Heightened sexual energy thrives on novelty and surprise. A woman with a strong sex drive may suddenly gravitate toward unpredictable experiences, not necessarily risky ones, but situations where the outcome isn't fully known. This might show up in small ways, like choosing a random dish at a restaurant instead of her usual favorite, or suggesting a spontaneous detour on a walk. It's not about thrill-seeking in the dramatic sense. It's about feeding the craving for dynamic, stimulating energy. But this craving for unpredictability often creates a striking contrast in her inner world, one that reveals itself in a deeply personal way. 5. She alternates between hyper-focus and distraction. When desire runs high, the brain struggles to balance two competing impulses: intense focus on what excites it, and restless wandering when that focus isn't satisfied. This creates a pattern where she might be deeply absorbed in a task one moment, almost obsessively so, and then completely scatterbrained the next. It's not mood swings or inconsistency, it's her mind trying to regulate a powerful internal drive without burning out. The easiest way to spot this? Watch how quickly she switches gears between topics or activities. The sharper the contrast, the stronger the underlying tension. And as this tension builds, it begins to shape the way she communicates, sometimes in ways that feel almost poetic. 4. She speaks in metaphors without realizing it. A woman with a high sex drive often expresses herself through metaphors, even when talking about ordinary topics. Instead of saying, "I'm tired," she might say, "I feel like a candle that burned too fast." These images reveal the heightened imaginative state her mind is in, a direct reflection of her arousal. She doesn't consciously choose these words to hint at anything. They simply emerge because her inner experience is too vivid for plain language. The more layered and evocative her speech becomes, the more likely it is that her subconscious is expressing what she hasn't fully acknowledged. And as we approach the final 3 signs, each one gets more profound and more difficult to fake. 3. She subtly rewrites her physical boundaries. When a woman's sex drive rises, her relationship with personal space shifts in ways that are often invisible to the casual observer. She might start leaning slightly closer in conversation, not enough to be obvious, but just enough to feel more of the other person's energy. Here's what's fascinating. She'll do this selectively. Around people who don't stimulate her in any way, her boundaries stay firm. But with someone who intrigues her, those boundaries soften like a tide slowly creeping in. You might also notice her giving others more permission to enter her space. For example, she won't flinch if someone brushes past her shoulder or sits next to her unexpectedly. This isn't about being friendly. It's about her nervous system unconsciously inviting physical proximity. The catch? This shift isn't always consistent. Some days she may appear completely open, while other days she instinctively retreats to protect her vulnerability. That push and pull is one of the most telling indicators of a high, unacknowledged sex drive. But as strong as this physical boundary shift is, what comes next dives into a realm most people never think to connect with desire. 2. Her creativity surges, and it shows up in unexpected places. Many people assume sexual energy is purely physical, but psychology tells a different story. It's actually one of the most potent sources of creative fuel. When a woman's sex drive is especially high, you'll often see sudden bursts of imaginative activity. She might start sketching, writing, redecorating a space, or even inventing playful games with friends. Here's the key. It's not about what she creates, it's about the intensity. Even mundane tasks, like arranging flowers or organizing a closet, become infused with unusual care and flair. The deeper reason? Her subconscious is channeling powerful inner tension into forms that feel safe and socially acceptable. She may not even realize why she feels so compelled to create. The fascinating part is that this creative surge can appear almost overnight. Someone who seemed indifferent to artistic pursuits may suddenly have a spark of inspiration that feels unstoppable. But all of this energy, the shifting boundaries, the restless creativity, ultimately funnels into one final, unmistakable sign. And this last one isn't just subtle, it's transformative. 1. Her stillness speaks louder than her movements. Most people look for desire in what someone does: the talking, the gestures, the eye contact. But when a woman's sex drive reaches a peak, the clearest signal isn't action, it's stillness. This stillness isn't ordinary calmness. It's charged, almost electric, like the quiet before a storm. Her body becomes deeply centered, her breathing steady, her gaze slightly softened. It's as if every part of her is holding space for an inner fire she's not ready to release. Why does this happen? Because at a certain point, her nervous system stops scattering energy outward and begins conserving it inward. Think of it like a coiled spring, perfectly still on the surface, yet filled with immense potential beneath. The remarkable thing is that this state often appears during seemingly unimportant moments: sitting at a dinner table, waiting for an elevator, listening to music alone. To the untrained eye, she just looks composed. But to someone who understands the psychology behind it, the truth is unmistakable. Here's the final clue. People around her feel this stillness before they consciously notice it. They might become quieter, more alert, or inexplicably drawn toward her without knowing why. It's a primal reaction to the unspoken signal she's giving off. When you see this, when someone seems perfectly serene, yet the air around them feels almost magnetic, you're witnessing the deepest, most profound expression of hidden desire.